What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. We have a YouTube exclusive where we weekly look at the lines for Week 10. I'm Will Brinson. See if I can do this right. Ryan Wilson, John Breech, and Sean Wagner. There we go. What's up, fellas? Let's dive right into the games. Again, we're going to look at five games, and talk about the lines. For more Pick Six Podcast, download, subscribe on Apple Podcast. We'll have our full Sunday recap out by the time you wake up on Monday morning. First things first, Seahawks at the 49ers. Huge game for divisional, well, not supremacy, but has huge divisional implications, huge playoff implications. Seahawks coming off a big win against Tampa Bay in overtime. The 49ers snuck by the Cardinals last Thursday. Ryan, the 49ers are -6.5 at home, over under 45. What are your thoughts?
Jimmy GQ, you mentioned coming off that huge game, 4 touchdowns for him, a career best. But Russell Wilson just threw 5 touchdowns on Sunday against the Bucs. That's a Seahawks record. Russell Wilson is the MVP as we sit here on Sunday night. He is the one-man show of that team. So on the other side, what do you have? You have the 49ers defense, which is really playing out of its mind. We see that week in and week out. But now we have Russell Wilson, who's getting Tyler Lockett involved, who's secretly one of the best players in the NFL. DK Metcalf, the second-round pick that people are now screaming should have been a first-round pick because people like to rewrite history. He's having a big impact. And oh, by the way, they're getting Josh Gordon back. So the Seahawks defense isn't nearly as good as the 49ers defense, but Russell Wilson, as I said, is the MVP. I love the Seahawks not only going into San Francisco and covering, I love them winning that game. They lost the last time they played in San Francisco, but you have to go back to 2013 to find the last time that the 49ers won at home against Seattle.
Whoa, Wilson, you think the Seahawks are going to win? That is a bold statement. One thing you did say there is that the Seahawks defense isn't as good as the 49ers defense. That is the understatement of the year. That is like comparing the Bengals offense with a normal NFL offense. It's not comparable. The 49ers defense, this is going to be the biggest test that Russell Wilson has had all year. Yes, he ran circles around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, but the Buccaneers, their secondary has been one of the worst in the NFL all season. Russell has having an MVP type season, but he has not seen a defense like San Francisco has. I actually think he is going to struggle in this game. And as you know, with the Seahawks, if Russell Wilson struggles at all, it is nearly impossible for them to win. So not only do I disagree with Ryan, but I actually think the 49ers are going to cover this. They're going to come into this game on an 11-day break. Because remember, they played Thursday, and now they get to play on a Monday. And then the 49ers just played an overtime, or the Seahawks just played an overtime game. So less rest for them.
I'm sorry, Breech, but I have to side with Ryan here. I don't know if the Seahawks are going to win this game, but a 6.5-point spread, I think that's way too much for the MVP frontrunner Russell Wilson. Look, the 49ers defense is probably the second best defense in football behind the Patriots. We all know that. We did just see Kyler Murray, though, have a little bit of success against the 49ers on Thursday night. We saw him throw for 250 yards, almost 2 touchdowns, completed 70% of his passes. I mean, I think Wilson's gonna be a whole lot better than Kyler. And so I actually think this game might go way over as well, because I think Russell Wilson is good enough to be matchup proof that it doesn't matter how good the defense is. He's going to score points. And then you look at the other side of the ball and you say, how is the Seahawks defense going to stop Kyle Shanahan, whatever he schemes up in the 11-day break that he has in between games? So I like the Seahawks to win this game, at least cover. I don't know about win. And I also like it to go way over.
You're a bigger fraud than the 2019 Chicago Bears, Sean. Thursday night's podcast, you were, oh, Jimmy G this, oh, Jimmy G this. And I said, mark it down. Next week, Seahawks win outright. And you guys tried to come after me and say I was crazy. I'm sticking by it. Wilson's stealing my bit here. Heck yeah, the Seahawks are going to go in there and win. The 49ers are good. They got a bunch of rest. That's great. They got a little bit exposed in terms of how you can approach them. And I think what we saw from Seattle on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, obviously a much worse defense. But what we saw is that they are willing to embrace Russell Wilson, spreading it out and slinging the ball around. I think if they can get Josh Gordon here, they'll have those 3 weapons. I like him to do that. Seahawks win this game outright. Best bet of the week. Lock it in. Sean's a fraud. Panthers at the Packers. Packers, humiliating loss for the Packers in the November Chargers. They're back, baby. Panthers going to Green Bay. Packers minus 5.5, John. Over-under is 48. Do you like your doppelganger, Matt LaFleur's chances of covering or winning this game?
If I know my doppelganger like I know my doppelganger, there is no way he's going to let this team get embarrassed 2 weeks in a row. I'm not sure what Packers team I watched on Sunday against the Chargers. That was abysmal. It looked like Aaron Rodgers was playing football for the first time. Receivers couldn't get open. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't do anything right. But you know what? This is not unexpected. Again, it's the first year running the offense. There's going to be hiccups from time to time. This is like at the beginning of the season, I thought Aaron Rodgers was kind of on training wheels. Then 2 weeks ago, last 2 weeks, it looked like he had mastered this offense. Now it looked like he took the training wheels off and crashed the bike. So I do think that it was definitely a rough patch. I do not think we will see that again. And I think Rodgers and friends will terrorize the Panthers offense. So I like Green Bay at Lambeau Field to win and cover.
So Breech mentioned how the Packers' loss to the Chargers was kind of uncharacteristic. I would agree with that when you look at the Packers' offense, but I thought what was very much on brand for this Packers team is that they really struggled against the run. They entered the week 22nd in DVOA against running offenses. The Chargers proceeded to go out there, run for almost 160 yards. I look at this game and I think Christian McCaffrey is going to eat. I think he's going to really dominate. So I don't know if the Panthers are going to win this game, but I think it's a field goal type of game. So I would take the Panthers to cover, riding Christian McCaffrey.
Good point, Sean. I was making fun of you for eating. So now, I have a theory about what happened to the Packers. They played in that soccer stadium out in Carson, California. I think Matt LaFleur took the Green Bay soccer team out there. They had no idea how to play football, and it looked like it. Now I don't know what to make of this team. The big loser, by the way, in all this are the Minnesota Vikings for losing on Sunday when they had a chance now to tie the Packers. We can talk about it at some other point. But the Panthers have now won, 5 out of 6 with Kyle Allen. We don't know when Cam Newton's coming back, and that seems to be okay. Sean sort of touched on it. Run CMC, or CMAC as some people like to call him. I think he's going to have another big day against the Packers defense, which is truly terrible against the run. They're much better against the pass. But the only passes that Kyle Allen's really throwing are to Christian McCaffrey. So I feel like there's a chance for the Panthers to go in there and win. Worst case, they're going to cover that.
Yeah, Carolina doesn't have a great history of going to Green Bay, if I just recall off the top of my head. If you see me laugh at any point through this video, it's because my dog is snoring loudly over on the couch. I don't know if you guys can hear it. It's cracking me up. At any rate, I agree with Sean. I think he's spot on point. 232 yards. If you look at what Carolina has done in terms of rushing on the ground, Christian McCaffrey has been outstanding. And if you look at what the Packers do, they cough up rushing yards like crazy. I also think Carolina's pass defense has been pretty good. And we saw like Rodgers could get pressure. I mean, I know that the Panthers don't have Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa, but when they were lined up on the same side going after Aaron Rodgers, he got in trouble, and I think Carolina will put pressure on him. I also kind of think that if you look at the numbers, the Panthers are the overs hitting a bunch more often than people expect. I kind of like the over in this game. I think we'll see some sneaky points. Kyle Allen throwing the ball downfield fairly well. I don't think we're going to see Cam Newton anytime soon. Maybe not again this year. Maybe never again in a Panthers uniform. Maybe never again at all. That's another story for another time. Bills at Browns. Browns are the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield looks like he's morphed into a plumber who just found out he's been framed for murdering his wife. He looks like he's Columbo or something in this press conference. 18 months of being the Cleveland Browns killing him. And he's still favored at home against the Buffalo Bills. Sean, Browns minus 2.5, over under 42. There could not be a less sexy game on the books than this one right here.
Let me be very clear and preface what I'm about to say by saying that I am not going to take the Browns to cover or win. I think the Bills are going to win this game because I think Baker Mayfield could have a nightmare against this defense. The one thing I will say, though, that kind of tempts me to take Cleveland is the fact that it's kind of flown under the radar that the Bills defense has been terrible against the run. I believe they were 28th in DVOA entering the week. Washington, while losing to Buffalo on Sunday, they actually ran the ball pretty well. Adrian Peterson, I think, averaged over 5.5 yards per carry, whereas the team, the Redskins, did. So I don't like the Browns in this game because I don't think you can trust them because they have a complete inability to do the little things right. But if they do have a chance to pull off I guess not the upset, but cover and win. I think they got to rely on Nick Chubb a lot. The problem is I just don't trust them to take care of the ball. We saw this against the Patriots last week as well, where they ran the ball really well, but they just couldn't take care of it. So I still like the Bills, but I'm a little bit worried about the Bills' run defense getting exposed again.
The biggest chance that the Browns have to win this game is if Josh Allen throws 14 interceptions. The Browns would be better off if Freddie Kitchens did not come out of the locker room and did not coach this team at all, and they just made up plays as they went along. For some reason, they refused to throw the ball to Odell Beckham. He was wide open on the play there towards the end that could have won them the game against the Broncos on Sunday. The defense continues to make penalties that cost them in the end. I have no belief at all in what Baker Mayfield is doing, what this offense is doing, what Freddie Kitchens is doing. I have a lot of faith in Sean McDermott, who I know is Sean Wagner-McGough's favorite coach. And I'm surprised he didn't bring that up because I think he's going to go to Cleveland. He's going to show his team this line and say we are being wholly disrespected by a 2-win football team that probably should have 0 wins. And then they're going to go in there and they're going to whip up on the Browns. They're going to cover. They're going to win. And I have very little trouble seeing that coming true.
Yeah, and let me go back to what Sean said about the Browns could potentially win this game if they were to just feed Nick Chubb and give him the ball on every play and just run it down Buffalo's throat. But like Ryan said, Freddie Kitchens runs this team. He's never going to do the right thing. He doesn't do the right thing. He doesn't know what the right thing is. And like Wilson said, if he doesn't show up, they probably would have a better chance of winning. The Browns have been a disaster this year. The Freddie Kitchens experiment has been a disaster. I don't know how they're favored by 2.5 points in this game. They couldn't beat Brandon Allen in Denver. They're not going to beat Josh Allen. I don't think they could beat Kyle Allen if they were playing him next week. They're not going to beat anyone. The Browns have just been an absolute disaster this year. It's tough to watch because you see them spots where, hey, maybe they could win if they made the right decision. If Baker Mayfield throws it to Odell Beckham, who was open. If they give it to Nick Chubb on a 4th and 1 instead of calling a QB sneak into the gut. They put themselves in a position where maybe they could win, but then they just fall flat on their face, and that's more of what I expect from the Browns. So I could not possibly, in good faith, pick them to win this game.
Yeah, here's the problem. Like the Browns had 21 first downs. The Broncos had 13. The Browns converted 40% and 6 of 15 third downs. The Broncos converted 3 of 9. The Browns had 351 yards and ran 73 offensive plays. The Broncos had 302 yards and ran 43 offensive plays. And the Broncos still won. It's because the Browns like to poop themselves every time they get out on the field. It's insane. They can't stop themselves from making terrible errors. And as much as I want to back Cleveland, I could see myself getting there to do it this coming week because they have these random peaks where they're really good, like when they smacked around the Ravens out of nowhere. I could see that being one of those games. But Sean McDermott is a really good coach who squeezes wins where he has no business squeezing wins. Freddie Kitchens is a guy who hands away free wins like it's Santa Claus. And I don't like the Browns in this spot. I would wait and see what's going on. I do think there's a chance we see some major league drama from Odell Beckham this week. Maybe it's squeaky wheel drama, or maybe it's something where he like loses his mind and leaves a team. So I just would hold off on messing around with this game. But I would lean towards the Browns because I think everybody will be off of Cleveland. Falcons at the Saints. Wow, what a cool NFC South matchup. Saints minus 12.5, over under 51. We don't yet know, Ryan, if Matt Ryan will be back, but presuming he is, I think this is probably an appropriate line. Do you dare back the 1-7 Falcons?
No, you do not. Drew Brees will be back. We know that with 100% certainty. He came back before the bye, looked really sharp after 5 or 6 weeks off. As you mentioned, Matt Ryan didn't play last week. Didn't matter. This is still a terrible football team. The biggest storyline is, of course, that Dan Quinn did not somehow get fired over the bye week. So he will be challenging Freddie Kitchens for the worst coach of the year award if they both hang around until late December. Here's something to keep in mind if you're at all thinking about taking the Falcons. They're 1-7, as I mentioned. In 3 of their last 5 losses, the losses have come by 14 points, 21 points, and 17 points. The Titans, Texans, and Rams. The Saints defense is a million times better than those 3 defenses put together. The Saints offense is among the best offenses in the NFL. Good luck taking the Falcons in any way, shape, or form. I'm all in on the Saints.
Yeah, this is a giant point spread, especially when you have 2 divisional opponents playing. But if anyone has watched the Falcons just play a single game this year, they're defense has just been an utter disaster. I mean, it's almost unbearable to watch. I don't know what Dan Quinn's doing at practice. I don't know if they're doing anything to get better because it seems like they actually get worse every week. Ryan just mentioned that they're getting blown out by teams every week, and the Saints as a whole are better than those three teams that have blown out the Falcons. So, I mean, I see Drew Brees putting up some huge numbers on this Falcons defense. They might hit a 50-burger. And if Matt Schaub, I don't know who the Falcons quarterback is going to be, but they're not going to be able to get in a shootout, especially going up against this Saints defense. So it is a huge number, 12.5, but I like the Saints.
Yeah, so we know the Falcons are obviously 1-7. The other stat that we should know is that the Falcons are 2-6 against the spread. And they did cover in their last game against the Seahawks, but they were down big in that game. They were kind of just able to score a lot of points late when the Seahawks were just kind of salt away the game. I don't think they can do that against the Saints team. We've talked about Drew Brees, and we know about how good that offense can be. I think this defense is still flying a little bit under the radar. I think they're peaking, or at least starting to peak at the perfect time. So I don't think the Falcons are going to be able to go down 17, 21 points, which they very well might, and then, work their way back into a cover. So I'm with these guys. It's a big line. I like the Saints. I don't know if I would necessarily play it, but I don't think there's a person alive who would take the Falcons right now.
Yeah, you can't touch the Falcons right now. I mean, 12.5. Let's see where it goes with news about Matt Ryan. We assume Dan Quinn will still be coaching the team since he hasn't been fired yet. It's hard to get there on the Falcons. They're terrible. I know they're coming off a bye, but teams, so are the Saints, right? I mean, and this is a chance for Sean Payton to really just annihilate a hated rival. We've seen how much they hate each other, the Thanksgiving games where he's like throat slashing at Devonta Freeman. I can't see a situation where he takes his foot off the gas here. Yeah, there's backdoor potential, but the Falcons are so bad right now. I wouldn't want to mess with them. So I would lean towards the Saints right now, but probably wouldn't touch it. Probably like the under as well, because I think they could snuff out the Falcons and just grind this game out in the run game. Chargers at the Raiders Thursday night. Oh, man. And who would have thought it? The freaking Oakland Raiders, 4-4 through 8 weeks, making us all look stupid. They're favored in this game, John Breech. Raiders -1.5, over under 47.5. What you think?
I think that I'm going to be watching this game for the facial expressions alone. This is like the Super Bowl of facial expressions. We have John Gruden on one sideline. We have Phillip Rivers on the other sideline. Those guys, I mean, I hope it's total chaos in this game just so we can see the faces they make. But here's who I like. I like the Chargers right now. What their defense did to Green Bay, I think they can kind of replicate that on Thursday. And when I see a defensive performance like that before a Thursday game where you only have 3 days of rest, I generally side with the defense, especially if we have a close point spread like we do there. And I do think the Chargers can frustrate Derek Carr like they did with Aaron Rodgers on Sunday. And, once you start frustrating Derek Carr, that's when he starts airmailing his passes. He gets erratic. He gets in fights with Gruden on the sideline. The Raiders fall apart pretty quickly if you can get in Carr's head. And I think the Chargers will be able to do that. So right now I am leaning Los Angeles.
Anyone who has listened to this podcast just one or two times knows that we are not Derek Carr's biggest fans, I think would be a very polite way of putting it. I think we got to give him credit, though. What he's doing right now is playing the best football, I think, of his career. He's averaging a full yard more yards per attempt than he did through the first 5 years of his career. That was before Sunday's game against the Lions. He proceeded to average somewhere over 9 yards per attempt, 3 for 2 touchdowns, carved up the Lions with ease. He looks really good. Yes, I'm a little bit concerned, as Breech said, what he does under pressure. And the Chargers certainly, with Bosa, could apply a lot of pressure. I just think you look at these two teams right now. I don't want to overreact to one win over the Packers where the Packers looked so inept. I think the Raiders have just been the better team all season long. So I guess I don't really understand why they're only favored by 1.5 at home. I feel like at minimum they should be favored by 3 points. So that's why I would take the Raiders. I just don't think this line is reflective about how good each of these two teams are.
You're wrong, Sean. The Chargers are 4-5. They're a half game back of the Raiders in the division. And Breech sort of touched on it. Derek Carr can get rattled pretty easily. And if you look at what the Chargers defense did to the Packers, who have one of the best offensive lines in football, they got after Aaron Rodgers. They stuffed the run game. There was very little for them to do offensively. The Raiders O-line is banged up. They had to move guys around on Sunday. They found a way to win. But here's the other thing. Brinson sort of touched on this. It's November. The Chargers don't show up in September. Sometimes they show up in October. It's hit or miss. They just fired their offensive coordinator. Their 34-year-old offensive coordinator sort of came out of nowhere with this game plan. I think he's going to have another game plan geared up for John Gruden and all of his many faces that we just heard about. I feel like the Chargers are going to win this football game, get right back in the mix for second place. Let's be honest. We know Patrick Mahomes is coming back for the Chiefs, but get right back in the mix for second place and maybe have a chance to make a playoff push down the stretch here.
I'm sorry. I thought Breech was diving into because of his clapping. I think I'm gonna do something insane here and take the Raiders -2, -1.5. I know the Chargers looked so good against the Packers in a Packers-friendly environment. Everybody and their brother is going to be on the Chargers this week, and I'm going to have to think about this one because look. You got to know when the Chargers are peaking and when the Chargers are trending certain ways. And the Chargers look sharp. It is November. This is when they start rolling and create this false hope thing that they can make the playoffs. Trust me, I know this very well. This feeling is something I've had a lot in my life. Philip Rivers did it at NC State, does it in LA, did it in San Diego. But I'm leaning Raiders because I think this might be where they get the football yanked out from under them after a very big win. Oakland, a much better team than people think. And, it's a nice clean game from the Chargers. They can't do that 2 weeks in a row. All right, we will have our full recap from Sunday. Make sure and check it out in Apple Podcasts. Rate, review, subscribe. Talk to you guys next week on the YouTube exclusive.